All right, let's make a Dopp kit. So I'll go through how I made this pattern really quickly, and then we'll show you how it goes from pattern to cut out pieces to these sub-assembly panels like this, and finally to a finished product like this guy that just needs to be flipped inside out. So you start with your side panel shape, and in this case I kind of went with rounded edges rectangle that tapers in towards the top. You could do a triangle, a circle, a square, a rectangle, whatever you want to make a little clamshell like this, but I always recommend rounding the corners. It's easier to sew around rounded corners. So you have your side panel piece, and then you make your spine pattern piece. So you really want, with the seam allowance, the zipper to go all the way around. You don't want the zipper to stop right here because then it won't be able to open up like a book all the way. So I've got my spine piece here that allows for the seam allowance to start right there. And the way that you get your zipper panel length is either get like a string or this tailor's tape here, start on the inside of your seam allowance. And I just go around and go like this, just carefully, slowly, making sure that I'm putting some weight down on this right-hand finger as I go around the curves to make sure that I'm getting everything in there. Again, they have like little measuring wheels that do this that are fancy, but I figure nobody actually has one of those at home, so I'm just showing you how I would do it. This is actually, I normally do it on paper or just with the tailor's tape like this. So got my length there that comes out to right here on the inside of this seam allowance. I normally do like 1 centimeter seam allowances, and now I have, that's how I made this zipper panel piece. And you want the width of your spine panel to be the same as 2 of these plus the zipper. So I guess you kind of have to figure out how wide your zipper is plus your binding tape and your top stitching to make sure that it comes out to the same width as this spine. And can take some experimentation, you know, if you make a zipper panel that's a little wider, you can just trim it down on the edges. So we've got our spine, we've got our side panel, we've got our zipper panel, and then this is the mesh pocket panel. So you can see it's longer, and that will allow me to put some tucks into it to add some three-dimensionality. So got that. I've already cut out all my pieces here. So I've got my interior side panels, got my exterior side panels, got my mesh pockets, I've got my exterior zipper panel, got my interior zipper panel, and then the spine, exterior, interior, and I've got my 2 little elastic webbing chunks to go inside here. And then all we're missing is the labels and the grab handles and the zipper pull tabs. So I'll have those over at the sewing machine and I'll meet you guys there. All right, so here we are at the binding station, our number 5 regular zipper. We've got our exterior zipper panels here and we've got our interior zipper panels. So if you're just getting started, I would recommend basting these things, which basically means sewing a rectangle around so that they don't move around. They're kind of attached. I've been doing it for long enough now that I can just kind of go straight to the binding station. So I get zipper outside face onto the outside face of the exterior fabric and just get going. And as I'm going, making sure that everything is getting caught nicely, I hold it in place. Make sure my binding dispenser is working. And as I get close to the end, I'll cut off this zipper. Normally if I'm making a batch of them, I'll just do them all in a chain like this, but since we're just doing this one, like that. Okay, there's one side of the zipper, so now I will grab my other 2 pieces for the other side, line it up, and if you do it with the zipper on top, it's best to do it with the zipper on top on the second side as well. If you want to do it with the zipper on the bottom, that's fine too, just as long as you do it the same way both times. because machines pull things through differently. So if you do it with one side up one way and then the opposite side the other, it might get weird. Get weird. Okay, so now we have our zipper panel, just needs to be top stitched. But while we're over here at the binding station, grab our mesh pockets and just straight. So I just go through here. Add some binding tape to the top on each mesh pocket. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of mesh, but it is nice for stuff like this when you have interior pockets and you want to be able to see what's inside. So obviously very see-through. And while I'm here, grab more of my zipper coil and chop a couple pieces that will get attached to this mesh pocket. Cool, so that's it for the binding station for now. Let's head back over to the main machine. So we're back at our main machine. We'll grab this zipper panel and top stitch it. I've got white thread in here so that it's not a contrast stitch. Same thing on the second side. Boom. Zipper panel has now been top stitched, so I'll grab the zipper pulls. They try to escape sometimes, but anyway, here we go. Get a split going on the zip and get one side on here, and this does take a little practice. Don't be too frustrated trying to get a zipper pull on here because it can be a real pain sometimes, but once you get the hang of it, it gets a little bit easier. And the second side, so that the two zipper pulls are facing each other. There we go. So now we've got two zipper pulls on there, and when you open it, it goes like that. So leave them in. So while we're here, why not grab our zipper pull tabs? These are just little pieces of webbing that I've hot knifed so that it stays together at the end like this. And what I'll do is line it up so that it's right there in the middle where it's supposed to be. And I will get it under the sewing machine foot completely so that it doesn't move around on me. Because sometimes if you start back here and you go over it, it'll try to push this little piece of webbing. So I like to start right on top of it, just backstitch. They say you're not supposed to do that over zippers, and I have broken some needles doing it, but I'm just a bad boy, so I like to break the rules. Okay, now I'll trim this just to make sure everything is nice and purdy and ready for the next step. Boom. Okay, so now we've got our completed zipper panel from one side to the other. We can set that back in our bin here. Okay, now we want to do our mesh pockets, and actually let's go over to the other machine just because I don't want to switch thread color on this one. All right, we're over here at the walking foot machine now, and again, this could all be done on that main machine, but I am lazy and I don't want to change thread color. So we'll get our zipper panels for the mesh pockets going by just, actually, you don't have to do this until after, but it's a little easier when you can just handle the entire length of zipper here. And if you hear in the background, that's a compressor running so that this machine has air to power its foot lift and all that kind of stuff. So I'll just go ahead and attach these zippers to the binding tape that we just put on a little bit ago. And we'll do the same thing over here. And you can make your zipper pulls open in either direction, really. The traditional wisdom that I've heard is you want it for right-handed people to open out, but you know, that's kind of lame to base it on that. All right, so now while we're over here with the black thread, we might as well put on our label, which I'll grab. Just make a little temporary fold there so I can see the center line, get everything lined up. Make sure the bobbin has caught. Yep, we're good. And these machines with needle positioning are super nice because anytime you stop sewing, the needle goes down, and then it really allows you to move your workpiece without worrying about anything. All right, no need to back tack because I went over the initial stitch. Boom, we got our label on, and again, while we're over here with the black thread, we'll get our spine piece, which I didn't cut all the way, so I can do that afterwards. But we'll baste this together so that nothing shifts around on us. We'll find the middle again. I just do this to get the spacing on this a little closer to right. So we'll have our little elastic webbing pieces, our Made in USA label, and then our second elastic piece. Try to make sure everything stays flat while we're going at this. Boom, got that edge in. Go all the way to the edge of our interior fabric. Boom. That does not look to be in the middle, does it? Yeah, no. Let's redo that. I should have marks on here for exactly where it goes, but... Okay, so there's the middle point. Do it on this side of the middle point. And now I see the middle point there, so about right there, right on top of the label a little bit. And I'll just go back around. I add a little bit of space to this elastic just for fun. Okay, well, this machine tried to pull the thread out on me. Over at the bar tacker now, this thing is loud, so just so you know. And we could just tack this down to this interior layer, but I like the extra strength it gives it by going through both layers, and you'll see the thread poking out on this side, but it's not the end of the world. One bar tack. Two bar tacks. Let's get the power turned off because that thing is loud. And boom, there we go. Just clean this up a little bit. Now we can go back to our May machine. All right, so now we have our interior layer, right side up. Got our zipper panel. And I like to keep just a little bit of space here at the top because binding tape is going to cover that up, and we don't want the binding tape to be just intruding on the zipper too much. Boom, get the top on there. And go over the zipper, start going down the mesh pocket, and here we want to get ready to add our tucks, our three-dimensionality, and it's best to do this not on the curve, just because any extra bulk around corners makes things trickier. And corners are tricky enough already as it is, so okay, now we'll try to match those two tucks that we did on the other side best we can here. And these are handmade patterns, hand cut, so it's never going to be as precise as a factory that has a plotting machine and robot cutting table and that kind of stuff. So pretty low tech here, but that's okay. So you always want to make sure that your zipper pull is not in the way because you can break needles and throw your machine out of time if you get a zipper pull caught under there. So here we go, tuck on the second side, second tuck. Whoops. Ah. Okay, there's a little extra here, but that's okay. I'll just tuck it in there for a little extra three-dimensionality. And we're gonna trim this stuff off anyway. So again, you know, not the most precise operation here, but we get the results, and there's a tiny little bit more wastage, but like I said, we're hand cutting everything, hand drawing everything, so there's gonna be some imperfection. Okay. Now we've got both of our interior panels. We've got our exterior panels, one side with a label, one side without. Got our marks on here as to where the handles go. So now I'll grab a handle, which is just a piece of webbing, 3/4 inch webbing in this case. We've got our interior panel, exterior panel, like that. We'll get it under here, get it lined up so that you almost can't see the interior panel. And I'll start right here in the middle. And again, now the zipper panel, or the zipper pull, excuse me, is underneath here, so you can kind of feel the bulk here, and you just want to make sure that you're zipping it out of the way. So I'll line up my handle here, one side. And as you're going around the bottom here, you want to make sure that you're not catching this like under there like that or something, because that'll just ruin your three-dimensionality. So you're always checking layers underneath as you go. So now attaching the interior to the exterior, moving the zipper pull out of the way, getting the webbing in the right place. Okay, that's one side pre-assembled. And I'll make sure there's not too much fuzz on this label side. Well, almost caught the pocket under there. And when I put this handle on, I start here and I just go out like this to make sure there's no twists in it, because you don't want to end up with a handle that's just all twisty. Make sure I found my marks. And there we go, second side panel ready to go. All right, so now we've got our side panels, we've got our spine, and we've got our zipper panel. So the next step is to attach our zipper panel, which is still, this Dyneema is not easy to cut. You got to get it at just the right angle, or else it binds up the shears. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so now we've got our spine panel and our zipper panel, and we'll go exterior to exterior. See how that matches up so that the zipper with the binding tape, top stitching, matches up to the same width as the spine. That's what we want. Back tack here, back tack there. Same thing on the other side. Back tack here, back tack there. Now we'll pop over to the binding station so that this is not a raw edge anymore. Now we're back at our binding station, and most people probably don't have a dedicated machine for binding tape, obviously. If you have an attachment like this that attaches to your machine, that's great. If you don't, it's not as easy to do, but you can take this tape and it's a little easier if you iron it in half, because then it stays folded just right, and you can do it by hand that way. But really hard to get results like this, especially as quickly without a binding attachment. Okay, so now we have our clean edges on the inside of the spine. So we'll go back over to the main machine and do the final assembly. All right, so before I start the final assembly, I'll do a check to make sure the halfway mark is where it's supposed to be. And I'll actually take these tiny little scissors and give a quick little small cut here. Oops, sorry, Dyneema. To make sure that I know where the center point is, and I'll do that on the other side as well. Okay, and then I will match those. Sorry, let me get that out of the way. Match with the top on these side panels so that I know exactly where the center is, and sometimes this Dyneema gives me a hard time, but I can see there's a little slit there. And I'll do the same thing on the label side. Make sure the handles line up right. Little cut. There we go, I can see that. So now I'll find this little cut, line it up with this little cut. So normally if you have a plot cutter machine that cuts out your patterns, you have these notches built into the patterns, and the machine does that so that this is all pre-done. But all right, so now I'll hold this real tight, make sure it doesn't move until I at least get a couple stitches in. And again, that's the nice thing about needle positioning, because I can just stop and it's not going to move around. Okay, so it's a little easier to start with the panel that has the curves on it on top so you can see them. So, sorry, let me just adjust this a little bit so you can see a little better. There we go. Okay, so now start going around the edges, and as I'm going here, I'm turning, and small curvy stuff like this is actually some of the harder stuff to sew. So if you're getting frustrated trying to go around these curves, know that you are not alone. A little back tack there. And then I like to flip over and start from the center going the other way, just to make sure that everything matches up on top the way it's supposed to. And the nice thing about not top stitching this right here is that it gives you a tiny little bit of wiggle room if you need to adjust this in. So go around this curve nice and slowly. Again, making sure that we're not catching our mesh pocket three-dimensionality in there. Okay, now here we are, we're on the spine. Into the straightaway and over to this side. I don't need to back tack because I back tacked on the other side, so that'll stay there. So that's one side on. Now I'll find the little slit we made in the zipper panel, find the little slit we made in the side panel, match those up. And do it again. Again, like the zipper pulls get in the way a lot, but that's the name of the game. And sometimes it makes things easier if you open the zipper all the way. I do that on the duffel bag sometimes. So again, the same process, just on the mirror side here. So I'll get around this curve, give it a back tack. Come over here, make sure the zipper pull's not in the way. We'll get you. I hope my hands are not in the way too much here. It's kind of a first in the how-to. Actually, let me switch camera angles here. So here we are going around the curve here. And just really take your time around these curves because it takes some finger strength and some patience sometimes. We want to make sure that our binding tape is facing the right way, if that makes sense. so that we're not going over it when it's like this, because that would just be bad news. Again, making sure we don't have too much caught up. I'm just almost constantly checking to make sure that I have the right layers that I want to catch under where is about to get stitched. All right, so there we go. We've got the whole thing put together. Now I just need to grab some shears, trim away at any bits that are going to stick out a little too far to make sure that when it goes into the binding machine, it doesn't give us a headache. So there we go, cutting that off, just making sure I'm still in the frame here. It's a wrist workout, forearm workout with this Dyneema. It's hard to cut. All right, so now we've got everything assembled. Let's take it over to the binding machine to finish it off. All right, so we're back over at the binding station with our assembled Dopp Kit. Just double check to make sure there's nothing that's coming off too close to the inside so that the binding tape won't catch it, and it all looks good. So I like to start here. It's a little less visible of a stop point when you open up the bag. And I'll just go around. And this is one of the reasons that I really prefer to have my binding machine as a cylinder bed, so it's not a flatbed machine. There's room underneath here for moving small things like this around. I find it super handy. As we get close to the end here, I like to take these little scissors, chop off so that it really starts where the stitching does. Boom, go over it just a couple stitches, pull it out, snip, snip, reset, and start on the other side. This is a little bit older machine, so it likes to try to pull the thread out as it starts, so hold it. Binding tape is pretty awesome because, as you see, it's pretty ugly under there, but once we put binding tape over everything, it doesn't matter. And then again, as we get to the end, make sure that won't get out of the way. Boom. Okay, now a little snip, snip. And there we go. Now we can take this over to the hot knife station to just make sure there's no fluff on these edges, and we'll be ready to flip it right side out. All right, so over here at the hot knife station, if you don't have a hot knife, you can use a lighter, or you could just fold this under itself and then stitch on top of it. But I have a hot knife and I have a fan that's extracting this air out to a carbon filter, so I get hopefully a little bit less cancer. And I will just heat it up a little bit and then melt. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. You can see the fumes getting sucked up into the hose there. It's kind of tricky. You have to hold it in the right place. And do be careful with hot knives because it is a dangerous tool. I cut myself with one once and it scarred me for life, but at least it cauterized instantly, so no blood. All right, so there we go. We've got the binding tape all cleaned up. We can go ahead now and flip it right side out. All right, so now here's a couple that are ready to be flipped inside out. I'll just unzip, and this is easier to do with a non-water resistant zipper, and flip it right side out. And you want to make sure that all your corners are well pushed out. Just working your way around. Nice, and then zip it up, do a quality check to make sure everything is caught in there, nothing's gonna come loose, there's no ugly stitching making itself visible. And so this one is a woven Dyneema Dopp Kit, and this is the normal size, the medium size, and here is a side panel for the small size. So it's not that much smaller, but I think it's handy. And here is one made from black Dyneema that I'll flip inside out. Or right side out, I should say. And there we go, zip it up. A couple of Dopp Kits. So yeah, hopefully you guys were able to learn something from this and it was somewhat interesting. And let me know if you want to see any other tutorials about how to make anything in the shop here. Thanks for watching. Just another final look at these guys. Here is the normal size out of a woven Dyneema. This one has a green interior. Pop. And here is out of black Dyneema, and inside of this is the small size. So this one that you can see on the outside is the normal size. Did that zipper just really? Okay, there we go. So normal size, smaller size, and yeah, they fit into each other and little nesting doll situation.